China.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. So, the agenda for today is really kind of give you a little introduction about Micron, obviously, for this year. We'll also then give you a little overview of the market trend and dynamics. We'll touch base a little bit about the system architecture and the key features that are supporting or driving the trends. And then we'll look at some of the system design challenges, both from mechanical, which impacts thermal as a major issue, and then high performance, really you need to apply high speed design rule as you move forward. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. So a little bit of Micron. So Micron, we're actually headquartered out of Boise, Idaho. We established in 1978. We have about 30,000 employees today worldwide. Our revenue in fiscal 2016 is about $12 billion. What we do is we make memory chips. That's all we do. We have 3D crosspoint, which is the new technology that we're developing that have very high cycle and also very high density. It basically has the performance, a near performance of a DRAM, but not as fast as a DRAM. But unlike a flash memory, we actually have very high cycle endurance. So, for example, a NAND flash, you may have up to 3,000 to 10,000 program array cycles that we can reuse. And then on the NOR, it's 100,000. When we talk about 3D crosspoint, we're talking about millions of cycles. So, the other key thing is our core competency is really, we have DRAM, flash memory, DRAM memory, and flash memory. And that's all we do. So, if you have any interest in Micron, please let us know, and we'd be happy to give you some. So let's take a look at the overview. So first, you want to take a look at from a multimedia service operator or MSO, some of the dynamics. The first thing is in North America, Western Europe, and Japan, they're really kind of leading the industry in terms of high bandwidth, high resolution solutions. And so in North America, in order to increase the market share within the operator, they need to generate more revenue by consolidating. So they actually have a lot of partnerships where the cable and the telco are collaborating together, the satellite and the telcos are collaborating together, because the name of the game is subscription or subscribers. How do you get more subscribers to watch your content? And so the world's going towards mobile. And so in order for the cable and the telco and the satellite guys to survive, they need to somehow adapt their solution to the mobile user. And so that's why we start to see a lot of collaboration between the cable and the telco and also the satellite. The other thing is there's a push for 4K content for set-top box. 1080 or high definition video is pretty vanilla nowadays. And so how do you motivate consumers to then subscribe and purchase your services? And that's why the market is really pushing for 4K video. Now, one of the challenges with 4K is where is it? There's not enough content. And the reason why is because the studio guys, in order for them to develop 4K movies, which they can, the problem is they don't have enough devices to support and able to project that content. For example, 3D movies. That was the big thing several years ago, but it crashed and burned. The reason why is because the amount of 3D video, some of the glasses cause a lot of lag and it causes a lot of frustration from a user perspective. But the movie theater, they put a huge amount of investment in upgrading all their equipment to support 3D. That never really panned out. So some of the comments that I received from the industry is, unless the movie theater upgrade their equipment to 4K, the dynamics to draw out 4K in a big way is not going to be that fast because of that huge investment. So what they're doing is you have the OTT, the service video on demand provider. They give you kind of like a trickle solution where they give you a little bit of 4K just to tease and get you kind of get excited about 4K. And in order to watch that, you got to have a 4K set-top box and a 4K TV. And then the other key thing is, as you were saying, is the network. The network can be very slow depending on how much you're willing to pay. And so by providing a set-top box with some kind of higher-end gateway, you not only get the higher bandwidth, but you also get the additional features such as IoT, such as some security, those type of functionality. And so that's really what's driving the North American market. And that kind of carry over to the US and Europe. They have to do very similar things that the US is doing. In Japan and Korea, they also continue to push the 4K, but they also need to maintain that low-cost satellite and cable set-top box and services purely for consumers who don't need to have that services. But Korea and Japan actually have one of the fastest internet services in the world. Obviously, we have Google Fibers trying to drive that. We have other Comcast and some of the other operators trying to get to gigabit per second network. The orange areas are really more of emerging types of countries where their focus is really to bring their consumer up and have a low-cost solution by doing the analog to digital conversion, and also provide a reasonable low-cost solution. So that is their priority. So in Canada, Eastern Europe, Russia, China, Latin America, Central Africa, and Australia, they all basically do the same thing. Get the analog to digital conversion as fast as they can, and then offer a lower cost that is acceptable for the consumer in that market.
Question.
Go ahead.
Well, I understand the TV guys are really interested in having 4K because it introduces a new generation of sales.
Absolutely.
But I guess with a cable box or a cable infrastructure, you've got a limited amount of bandwidth.
That's correct.
And people necessarily want to be pushing 4K versus more data content or other material. I mean, is there an infrastructure cost addition?
Yeah, so it depends who you talk to address that comment. When I talk to the CDN guys, they all say I have unlimited bandwidth because I can build up my infrastructure very quickly. But they never say that's a huge cost, right? They just find the vision is they can get the bandwidth out. The problem is with 4K, you're thinking you're increasing the number of data you're sending out, but the compression is actually double. And so even though, for example, on a 1080, your data rate, you only really need about 5 to 7 megabits per second from a streaming video. For 4K, you only need about 12 megabits per second. Now, there are some operators who want to go to 25 or even 50 megabits per second. And the reason why they're doing that is because they basically need a bigger pipe, but now they have more tuners to then divide out that channel in order to be able to provide you with multiple 4K optical rooms and devices. So that's really the challenge.
I guess I would add on that many MSOs feel from a competitive point of view, if they can get to 4K faster than their competition, they have potential in every one of these cycles to try to steal customers from their competitors. And in addition, they get incremental sales from 4K movies delivering them on demand. So there's actual marginal revenue built.
It seems like maybe the MSOs have monopolies in particular regions.
Well, so there's always at least a satellite competitor, and usually there's a cable telco competition. Well, in many regions, there's a cable telco competition as well.
Right. So there's a lot of competition on who can get to 4K because exactly what you're saying is that incremental revenue that they can gain that subscriber away from the competitor. But then again, at the end of the day, is how much content, 4K content is really out there. And so right now, the industry is really trying to do a lot of handshaking where they partner with each other to try to get additional content licensing. That's really the name of the game is how can you get more content licensing that can entice the consumer to then subscribe to their services over their competitors.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you see the TV service as it is priced today up for a major disruption?
The DTV in itself, obviously you have your upscale 4K, and then you have OLED, which is 4K, and HDR. That's really the main disruption, is really when you get that high quality TV. But again, if you don't have true native 4K, the resolution, you're not going to get that game experience. And so as a consumer, the excitement is to buy the 4K because of the branding and the marketing story behind it. But the dynamics to really have 4K and and explosion in terms of adoption is really to get that content out there. That's really exciting. But all very good questions. The key thing here in India is you would think India really want to stay a low cost type of model. But there's a lot of new wealth in India. And so actually what they're doing is not only going to convert the analog to digital, but they're making a huge push for 4K content. Purely because they want their audience or their citizens to have this experience of the Western world of the 4K content. So I hope this will give you dynamics from an operator perspective. So now let's take a look at from a trend perspective. In the US, Europe, and Korea, Japan, like I mentioned earlier, it's really consolidation. Comcast is trying to do a partnership. For example, they added Netflix apps into their set-top box. They're providing their Comcast app into OTT set-top box. It's really to collaborate between the two services because why? It's because if you can provide the user more options, they would purchase your subscription in that context. So AT&T and DirecTV, I think we're all aware of that. AT&T, obviously they're a telco, they're not getting the mind share because their data rate is not fast enough. But by partnering or acquiring DirecTV, they now expand their work because now they have a lot more content and entice the consumer to really go down that path. Then we have Charter, White House, and Time Warner. They already merged together. And then you have Verizon acquiring Intel OTT design team about 5 years ago, and they're really adopting that. And so Verizon's really taken off in terms of providing not only on the services on the mobile, but also providing the IP OTT hybrid set-top box to give to consumers the option to do more content. In Europe, you have these are the major operators that are already either merging together or they're really having a partnership. LGI is really the largest cable operator in Europe, and Sky is really the largest satellite operator in Europe. And so they're really merging their services together in order to get a bigger mind share in the consumer. And then in Korea and Japan, you have Japan Com and NTT, they're merged together. You have Korea Telecom, SK, and LG Uplus. They're also having a partnership in order to get the subscription up for the content. And again, the emerging countries, same thing. They're also partnering in order to get subscriber and content. And in India, again, they're more of a direct account. Tata is the largest India operator in India, and they really kind of control both the satellite and cable. The main key thing is, what does that mean to the consumer? The operator, by having acquisition, they get more subscriber and they get a greater leverage on negotiating content with the studio and the distributor. Premium content is what drives you as a consumer to want to purchase their services. And by doing these mergers, they get immediate access to a larger market because the telco guy can now get immediate access to the satellite subscriber and so on. And then the last thing is the government influence operator, which is mainly in China and Russia. So they can't really do a lot of major changes because the government will control the dynamics. However, they are also trying to push their consumer to higher end services because there's a lot of new wealth available in those countries. Any questions? So let's take a look at now as the set-top box and CPE, or basically it's the customer premise equipment, such as your home modem or gateway. So the reason why I want to show both the set-top box and the CPE devices because you really need to appreciate the dynamics. So the satellite guy is really the main driver in terms of pure subscriber and the number of set-top box sold. Is because the infrastructure upgrade is very inexpensive. You just put satellite on anyone's house and now you have a beam directly to the satellite. They were going to have a downtrend, but now The market is now increasing, so the trend is starting to move back up because of more content availability and more wealth in other countries. And then the other thing is, a lot of countries are migrating from analog signals to digital signals. In third world countries, it's actually you can convert from analog to digital to a silent dish. So it's not just a TV that you put over an antenna, but it's also now you can have a satellite set-top box that receives free satellite services because of the government making those services available. The cable industry is starting to pick back up again as well. It's because even though for a while they were getting saturation, and it's really at least in the U.S. and Western Europe, the subscriber really kind of changed their subscription between cable and satellite and back and forth. But now with the trend moving towards an IP set-top box and that collaboration between different operators and services, now they can have additional value. So in the telco and cable guys, they want to expand their gigabit per second network. And also they want to grow the IP set-top box by having a joint venture or a bundled model with the CPE, where you have very high speed modems or gateway that you can now have a main box in your house, and then you have a bunch of small IP set box in all the other rooms, and you stream seamlessly. IP set-top box is really an IP, but now by bundling with the CPE media gateways, now the consumer is able to not having to just purchase having a big set-top box in their main family room with a hard drive. They can now consolidate and reduce their boxes and power consumption by just having a gateway, and all of their video can now stream wirelessly through Wi-Fi to the IP set-top boxes in the other rooms. And so by doing that, you're able to have a smaller and lower cost because you don't really need a hard drive, and you can remove the fans, and you can have the high performance that you're looking for, 4K today, and really 8K in the future, and also gigabit per second support. The DTT or digital terrestrial television signals, that's the analog to digital conversion. That's really slowing down because the US, Europe, most of the Western Europe, a lot of the Asian countries already have migrated over to digital. So the amount of locations that needs to still convert over to digital is getting smaller and smaller. So really the key message is cable, satellite, and IP is really starting to revamp itself. But IP is really the main growth market. And the really main driver is also the CPE equipment. It's because of that collaboration between the operator and the cable and the gateway that is also as a bundle to give you higher value services.
You differentiate is it cable, analog cable boxes, or
The digital cable box.
So what's the difference between the cable and IP box?
I'm sorry. So this is fiber.
No, I'm sorry, cable IP is separate things.
Oh, so you have your traditional satellite and you have your cable. IP can be, it's not tied to a cable, it's not tied to a satellite. It's just an IP technology. It's just internet protocol.
Whatever the source is.
Whatever sources you can use.
So, question on the
Yes.
colors here. There's like 7 different bars there, but there's
It's the year.
yeah, but there's 7 bars and there's 4 years. Which way?
Yes, it starts with 13, 14, 15, 16, and it goes to, I apologize. It goes to 19.
Oh, that's projection out 2019.
Correct. I don't have the latest number for 2020, and so I apologize when I redid the graph to show all the dates. So when I update this, and I'll make a presentation available to you, that'll show all the dates.
So it's the first 4 to the left.
Correct.
But this is done in Q3 2015, so even 16 was projection.
That's correct. So right now the projection is still relatively flat or a small increase, but it's not going to be a major fall because the market is quite saturated, at least in the U.S. and Western Europe. The emerging countries, even though they're having more subscribers that they're at, is really going to grow with the IP set.
What's the unit on the y-axis?
It's millions of units. Global. So let's take a look now at from a market size perspective. The reason why I show both revenue and set-top box from a unit perspective is really because you have to look at it from two different perspectives. If you only look at it from a revenue point of view, you're thinking it's really a declining market, right? Because the market is starting to shrink from billions of dollars in revenue. In context, that's true. The reason why is because if you have subscribers that are saturated, they need to somehow reduce their costs in order to get more subscribers. And so by reducing their box cost, that revenue goes down. The subscriber revenue continues to go high. But if we look at just the box revenue that's generated by the operator, that trend is really a downward declining trend. But if you look at it from a unit perspective, it's actually a growing trend. Because now they're switching away from your traditional big set of boxes that you have in your main family room into IP set-top boxes that are smaller and cheaper. And so now they can have more and more boxes in the home, and so the total unit count actually increases. And so we kind of look at it from satellite, cable, IP, DTV, OTT media server, and then HDMI dongle. HDMI dongle is very small from a total TAM perspective. The OTT really we're talking about, for example, the OTT like Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast. Those are the media boxes that you get. That customer wants to really do a cut-to-cord model, right? They basically want to say, I'm tired of paying all the operator a huge amount of money every month, and so they just want to cut the cord. But cutting the cord, what does that really mean? They still have to have some kind of internet services in order to watch what they want. So the operators still get you from a revenue. And if you want really high data rate for 4K streaming, you got to pay higher data rate. So either way, the operator still wins, but it gives the consumer the perception they have to take some amount of control. That's why we started to see the term skinny bundle. It's now the operator recognized the trend to go toward cutting the cord. So now they're offering these small skinny bundles so that way it entice you to come back to the services. Because even though you go into Netflix and Hulu, they have a limited amount of content that they have licensing with the studio. And so by the operator coming in, like the cable operator, satellite operator, they have a huge amount of content with license already established with the studio. So now they offer you skinny bundle that is a la carte to your request. So now instead of paying, let's say, $100 for 200 channels that you never watch, you now get $50 and you get 50 channels on the channels that you want to watch, because now it's an a la carte type of model. So Sling TV really kind of set the bar to kind of enact that model. Sling TVs actually belong to Dish side. And so Sling actually offered a $20 skinny bundle. DirecTV now offered that, and then Dish also now offers FlexPack. Comcast also has some kind of skinny bundle that they also offer as well. The reason why is because they want to entice you to don't leave, because we still recognize the value of the content, but we'll give you more of an a la carte model where you don't have to pay that $100, but you can pay a small rate and still get the content that you want, and be able to provide you with a set-top box and to continue to grow the unit count that they need to drive into the market. From a unit perspective, it's really flattening or growing. The set-top box getting smaller, faster, and cheaper from the operator perspective. It's really because they're trying to get excitement in the market. The hybrid set-top box, what does that really mean? A hybrid set-top box would include both a satellite or a cable tuner, and it has a over-the-air, so you can receive free TV over antenna, and it has an IP interface. So depending on which you want to use, they can actually give you a hybrid that you can connect to any of the services you happen to pay for. So a satellite provider will give you a hybrid box that has satellite, IP, and over-the-air free TV, so it's combined. A cable guy would just give you the cable, the over-the-air, and then the IP. So these are the type of games that they're trying to entice the consumer to give themselves a perception that they recognize your frustration and they want to give you a service that you are looking for that's more than an hour part.
How healthy is this business for the semiconductor providers and set-top box manufacturers? The volumes are flat, and what technology is there?
So the flat is really have to look at it from a different perspective. From a total unit shipped out, it's really because the number of subscribers are switching from one operator to the next. Every time they switch out a box, that box has to get sold again. Right? So if you were a satellite customer and you cancel and you want to now go to your cable, the cable now serves you in a cable box. The net is still the same.
But you're having to put a lot more technology into these systems in order to get the person to switch over. At the same time, the prices are
Absolutely.
flat.
Absolutely. So that is the trick. So in order to do that, from a memory vendor, we have to develop new memory that has a low cost and give you the density or the capacity that you would want to have as a consumer to either store your video or temporarily store your video. Because the idea is they give the content available on the net or their firewall. You can go to their site, grab what you want to watch, and then you can what something that's called you can personal video record that 1, 2, or 3 shows, or you can actually download, and because of network congestion, you can actually what's called time shift or pause or rewind. So a temporary store 15 to 30 minutes of that content onto the set-top box. So from you as a consumer, you're thinking you still get all the features and the benefits you want. But in reality, by reducing the density and doing some of these trick plays, we actually able to reduce the costs and able to continue to grow the units as needed. Does that answer your question?
It does, but now you have to be curious, how does flash guy play in this type of market where the media is constantly being rewritten and you have a certain number of rights?
Absolutely. You're kind of jumping ahead, so. So you jumped a little bit ahead, so I'll address that in a few slides. But very good question.
A couple of dumb questions. I haven't been following this for very long, for some time.
Sure.
But you know, I keep reading off and on about you know, large companies like Google and all offering technologies which would lower the cost dramatically. So one avenue obviously is the licensing agreement, which protects the content. And the other aspect may be regulations.
Yes.
Can you discuss something about regulations, how that affects,
particularly getting rid of net neutrality?
Yeah, so net neutrality was a big thing a couple years back. Obviously, the FCC chairman, Mr. Wheeler, has been ousted, and we have a new guy coming in. And the model, what Mr. Wheeler wanted to have is, they want you as a consumer to be able to buy instead of lease set-top boxes. The set-top box actually was available if you know how to buy those, right? But the idea is now, when you're able to, you as a consumer, buy these set-top boxes, you still have to subscribe to that operator in order to get that content. And so the only thing that the net neutrality allow you to do is allow you as a consumer to make choices. But at the end of the day, you still have to pay for that service. And so what Mr. Wheeler wanted to do was also break that model, where any consumer can get any content from any operator. And that was really where the major disruptions are. And so with the new chairman coming in, he said, you know, that's an unfair way of moving through the market. We have to make that fair availability. So during that period of time, a lot of operators now recognize that there's a major risk that they may lose their control. So that's why they start to, for example, Comcast provide their app onto the OTT box, the subscriber video on demand, the SVOD services, providing apps onto this operator set-top boxes and vice versa. That's really how they're able to go around that net neutrality challenges. And that's how they're able to maintain the continued growth in terms of unit and continued growth from a viewer perspective to be able to buy more subscriptions. Any other questions? So some of the other things I want to kind of give you a trend before we go to deep dive. A lot of viewers think that, well, if I can watch TV anywhere at any device at any time, this really kind of highlights. So this green area graph is actually, I got the source from Ericsson. They actually did a white paper back in 2015, where they show that the majority of the consumer watches their content around the home area. Even though you have this new merging where you can watch anything anywhere on any device, it's still kind of focused around the home as the main source of watching your content. So one of the key factors of moving toward a set-top box usage model is really the time shift. And time shift really what that means, you can watch live TV on a particular schedule on your own time. So actually you can watch live TV, it's been pre-recorded, and you can actually now go back to their website or channel and able to watch that at your time that you want. And then play shift TV is really, you can actually take your box and watch, let's say you're watching ABC News right now in your home. You can actually now pause and go on your mobile and you go to your next location and continue to watch that same content continually at a different location or a different device. And why is that important? Is because the operator and the CDN can actually track everything you're watching. It's not to violate any privacy. The reason why they do that is so that way they know what you're watching from a trending perspective, so that way they can give you very targeted ads. Because at the end of the day, to monetize the personalized experience is really about the ROI for dynamic and targeted ads that is relevant to you based on your historical. And the other key thing is the US TV path is really going to proliferate across other geography. For example, in the US, the average weekly TV watch time is about 28 hours a week. And the time shift TV between for 18 to 49, which is the coveted group that people want to provide ads, is really 3 hours. So they really don't shift that TV that often as you may have perceived. So really, the main message is they still watch a lot of TV per hour on a weekly basis. But now the operator and the CDN can now give you very targeted ads that you don't want to, or you don't need to skip the ad because it's now relevant to what you're watching. Now, obviously, I can see you squinting because obviously our audience who really don't want any ads at all. But then there's a cost factor. The operator, if you're watching the streaming video, they know that if you skip the ads, they can't generate the revenue. And so in order for them to keep that cost low, they reduce the cost of the subscription, but they tie your hand to that advertising as long as it's relevant to what you're watching. If you're willing to pay a higher premium when you have a local DVR like a hard drive, then you can skip those ads. And so there are different models for different types of consumers. Some of the press releases that I'd like to highlight with you, for example, Roku TV, they can actually allow you now to take a standard 16 gigabyte USB stick, stick it on a Roku TV, and actually you can actually download what you're watching for free. It's a trial phase to give you that user experience. Sling TV introduced 100 hours of cloud DVR on a Roku box. Why would they do that? Because they're competing against themselves. The reason why is because they recognize Roku has a lot of audiences. But they want to test out their cloud services. So what's the best way? See what you're aiming to get the knowledge and user trending in order to figure out how you want to model your infrastructure. Comcast provided the cloud DVR and the X1 platform. They have the XG series, which is the gateway, and the XI series, which is the IP set-top box. So basically what they're doing is they're providing you a gateway box, which is a modem and a gateway. And they have local PVR. They actually have flash memory on there that you can actually record 3 to 5 movies. But they also provide a IP set-top box. That set-top box no longer has a hard drive. It's now this little small box that you can put anywhere that communicates through Wi-Fi to the gateway, and the gateway authenticates to the Comcast network. So now your infrastructure from home is actually more simple. And the other key thing is Comcast recognized that they're leading the industry, so they're actually licensing the X1 platform to other US and Canadian operators. And so, for example, Shaw in Canada already signed up to design, they moved away from the original design of IP set-top box and actually adopted the Comcast X1 platform model. AT&T, DirecTV, they actually offer online streaming services, but they said we can't offer that cloud DVR yet until 2018 timeframe. And the reason why is because they're trying to get that infrastructure in place. So if you have an AT&T DirecTV services now, if you want to pause and rewind, you can only rewind 15 seconds of that content, unless you buy a service that has a hard drive. For Comcast, because even though you don't have a hard drive, you can actually pause and rewind for 30 minutes. So everyone's really trying to figure out what's the best option for them. So really, what does that all mean? It's really the cloud DVR, which is kind of like the ubiquitous model, where everything's on the cloud, you can access it anywhere, anytime. They're trying to figure out, is that the right model, or do you want to have a hybrid where they have some kind of local storage, that way it can complement the network lag that you may have, because not everyone can afford gigabit per second network. If you're only having 10 to 15 megabit per second, which is typical in the US, maybe having local storage makes sense. And it's able to make you as a consumer happy as you subscribe to new information. Yes?
Isn't 10 megabits enough for most HD speeds?
10 megabits is good enough for HD. If you want 4K, they really recommend you at least 12 to 15 megabits per second. But they don't sell you 12 megabits per second. They give you 10, or they give you 25.
So even with the higher compression you were talking about earlier, it's still...
It's a perception. Technically, you can get away with 10 to 12 megabits per second. But if there's any lag in the network, your viewing experience becomes horrible, and you would then complain and say, I'm going to cancel my services because I have glitches. And so they actually push you to that higher data rate in order to give themselves enough guardrail so you as a user don't see those issues.
It's only a bit. The number is only a bit. It's not good.
It's actually packetized data.
Comcast and everyone else, all the numbers that they give you, it's a bit. If you check it, you will find out.
Say it's not the same.
It's not continuous length, so just go.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's also worth noting, I think, that when you have a live stream, then there's different problems than when you're watching a movie or something on DVR, right? Of course, you have greater ability to pre-buffer more content and be less susceptible to network outages and network problems. Versus live, when you're trying to run 2 or 3 seconds behind live, where you have very thin margins, that you really have to have continuous high network quality.
So the question is buffering. There's 2 ways to buffer and keep the cost down or cost up. If you want to buffer, you can put the traditional model to buffer in DRAM. DRAM is very expensive, high power, and you don't want to put a lot of DRAM in your system because your system goes up with higher cost. And so some of the models is actually going to buffer in the cache memory. Because they buffer, the access time for a flash, you can actually read in megabytes per second, when the channel reading from the flash to the decoder is in megabits per second. And so that's why they can be able to do some of these tricks in order to compensate for the higher cost of DRAM by offsetting some of that content into the flash. And that's really wrong with that we're doing.
I have another dumb question. So it's, set-top boxes, it seems at the moment, continue to focus on delivering great content with great quality.
Yes.
But it does seem that, the home is changing. There's IoT, there's a lot of stuff. In the past, there was Microsoft Connect and new applications. Do you see that set-top boxes are trying to break out of that tradition and do something different?
That's a very difficult question to answer. Because at the end of the day, in order for an operator to make revenue, is for you to receive the content. They don't really care if you receive the content from a set-top box, or from a game station, or from an OTT box. At the end of the day, what does that really mean in terms of how it changes inside the house? As long as you receive the content, they make money. As long as they can provide you advertising, they make money.
It's a sure bet.
That's true. The question in play is, how much does that content stay on the cloud? And how much content is that temporary store locally in the box? That's really the question.
Set-top boxes are disappearing to some extent when you have a smart TV.
Yes.
I bought a new Roku. I ended up not using it.
Sure. But let me ask you a question. With your smart TV, are you really getting channels, premium channels that you would normally get on a set-top box? Or are you really getting content, let's say, from a subscription VOD vendor like a Netflix or Hulu? Yeah. That's the balance that you have.
It's similar to an IP set-top.
Absolutely. It's just basically your smart TV is actually an OTT box with a TV screen. Yes.
Yeah, again, you have a smart TV with a Comcast app, as well as a Netflix app, as far as in a Roku app. You have all these apps, and the smart TV is an IP enabled box. And you just, via Wi-Fi, you connect it to your gateway. To be not too expensive, because you would have much stuff beyond Wi-Fi and modems.
Right. So that is one option. The question is, what is the purpose of a TV? The purpose of TV is really to project the content onto your screen. If you add all these services or ability to download and store more apps, that means you're going to increase the cost of the TV. And if something happens on the TV, let's say you run out programming rate cycle endurance on the clock, for example. The cost of replacing a TV is huge, but the cost of replacing or fixing a set-top box is much lower. And so from an operator perspective, they'd rather provide you a box that is easily swap out versus a BTV. So yes, what you're saying is absolutely true, but what is the right model for you as a consumer?
They also don't have capital investment, in the SCVs. Comcast is saying millions of them.
Again, it all comes down to, it's not really control, but how do they maintain the quality of services when you buy a subscription? If you put all that content on controlled by a TV, if something happens, you become very angry. They can't control that quality of service. That's really tough. I think you're right. You're shaking your head. I like to agree.
The cable guy wants to lease and make money, and that's all. The TV could have done most of the job by itself. And in the United States, every TV has to be off air, for example. It's included. It could have been included all the other things.
Absolutely.
But there was a resistance to this because they can control you and they can monitor what you watch by getting the response. And it's a business issue. It's not a technology issue.
Again, like that's what I'm saying is, it's not a technical issue.
And they lease it. So you don't buy it, they lease it. So they charge you every moment. They're making a lot of money on the leasing.
They make a lot of money on the leasing, but they also get trapped in inventory of obsolete boxes.
Correct.
And they don't like that. So MSOs are very fraught with whether they love the lease revenue, but they don't like the inventory of stuff. Putting the technology into television sets is great because the television sets then are smart and fly off the shelves, but television sets have a life of 7 to 10 years, and set-top box technology typically only lasts 2 to 3 years. So then you have this smart TV that has to be augmented by a new set-top box in order to continue to work.
Right. So it's really a circular argument. Right? It all comes down to is the operator can do, their priority is make you happy as a subscriber. Enjoy the content you do.
just want to collect
They
money.
want to-
They want to make, they want it to be good enough that people will pay them.
Exactly. That's what it's in.
So the Wheeler thing is he's just trying to execute on something that was settled a long time ago. In 1996, there was this Communications Act, and which you could buy set-top boxes in retail. But to this very day, there's no such thing.
There is T-Mobile.
There's chefs.
No. Yeah, I understand T-Mobile. That involves a cable card, which I was once involved in, which was a huge failure, not really technical.
All very good comments, and you're all right, but in different ways. So this kind of eye chart basically is really kind of compare the value of a set-top box having a local storage versus a set-top box having a cloud storage. So what does the cloud really give you? From an operator perspective, and the CDN can say, well, I can give you unlimited storage capacity, bi-directional update anytime, but they control the content and they control the infrastructure. So good for them, good for you, you get unlimited content. And it can provide you an a la carte solution, you can get it anytime, anywhere. It's a low cost from a self-installation because they don't need you to do anything other than plug in cable. Right? The cons is licensing. If the content is it a single license, a shared license, or a distributed license? Because the studio wants a piece of the pie, however and whenever they give you the content to watch. And so it really becomes a licensing issue from a content perspective. That's a huge infrastructure cost upgrade in order for them to add in this infrastructure to have this unlimited capacity of storage. It has to get stored somewhere. So all these big server farms that have huge amount of racks of storage. For a memory vendor, fantastic, we love it. But these guys already have to balance the cost of the infrastructure. And then really, how do they balance the ads versus the consumer behavior? Like you made the comment is, if you don't like ads, you want to skip it. But if they provide you unlimited resources, are you willing to trade that value to then watch the ads? So it's really a trade-off that you really have to consider. And really at the end of the day, it's really quality of experience. If there's any network lag or buffer glitches, cloud is not perfect. I don't know about you, but even though I have a 25 megabits per second network, I still get glitches all the time on my network, right? And so, how do they guarantee that uninterrupted view of that movie you're seeing, especially watching a football game? Imagine the Super Bowl at the last Super Bowl, right? With Brady speaking of the last quarter, he's able to win. It's when you have a little disruption, you will miss the key play, right? If they buffer that and you miss, you can actually be blind and watch that over and over again. Hardware, is the standard today, but really, it's a high cost of service. It's reliable, unreliable, it's mechanical failure. And if you send out a 500 gigabyte storage and you want a terabyte, you're going to have to tell Comcast or whoever, say, I want to be boxed, so now the cost is now swapping you time off to get you upgraded.
They enabled the E7 bus on the back of the boxes.
Again, if they allow you as a consumer to stick something in,
right,
then if something happened, is it their fault or is it your fault? At the end of the day, if you see a problem, you're going to complain to the operator before you commit that it's your fault. So really, you can do that, but it's a challenge. You mentioned about endurance cycle on the flash. So you have video storage on a card. You can put on a card, similar to the hard drive, it's much lower power, smaller size. It's easily managed by a field service provider. You can send your box to a service location and they can swap it out. But at least they have control, and it masks any temporary network glitches. The problem is, similar to a hard drive, but it's really less effort for them. They still have to do something to do that change. I won't talk about UMC yet because it's a new concept, but you can actually put a retail card. But the problem is the retail card is, at first look, is inexpensive. You can buy it anywhere. The product is unreliable. There's no quality control. And it's not tested to your particular usage model. Because if you're watching a movie or a TV and you pause and rewind, every time you pause and rewind, that's a new write operation to the memory. A flash memory only has 3,400 erased returns. Depending on your data rate and how often you do it, you blow out that endurance cycle very, very quickly. And so as a consumer, you can say, hey, my set-top box is no longer working. It's your fault, operator. The operator said, how can I help you? Well, you gotta send me a new box. Now that becomes a problem for the operator. Because now they have to send a service technician come out to determine, is it the card that you bought or is it the box? So really, the name of the game is how do they make you having a seamless user experience. And that's why they're introducing this new video storage card capability, where it actually has the ability to go high endurance in order to meet this model. I'll just skip real quick here. Set-top box and OTT from a service perspective. Obviously, you have your live unit TV, which is you can watch on a particular schedule. And you have video on demand TV, is really you choose on whatever channel content within their own library. And the OTT box is really paid subscription, video on demand. It's basically like Netflix. All the movies are there, but you pay a subscription to watch that content. Yes.
So I mean, if a hard disk drive for these set-top box manufacturers costs $40 for a terabyte drive.
500 gigabyte right now is about the cost to the OEM is about $30. Okay.
So probably 2.5-inch drive is 500 gig. You go 3.5-inch in, you do 1 terabyte, you do machine magnetic recording, or get even higher densities. So for $35, $40, how much flash memory can you put on the video card? How many hours of video is that?
It's a balance. So that's a very valid question. So if I take, for example, a 1080 HD movie, a single movie for about an hour movie takes about 2 gigabytes to 3 gigabytes of memory space. So how many can you get in a 500 gigabyte file disk?
But for $35 of your video card, how much memory is in that $35 video card?
It won't be as much. The reason why is because if you're only going to watch the content that you really want to watch, Nielsen actually did an analysis where, on average, consumer only watched whatever the first showing of that content within the first 3 days after the showing. It's the majority of the percentage that's being viewed. Anything after that 3 days drops very, very quickly. And so, from an operator perspective, if you're watching the Super Bowl, how long do you really want to keep that onto the local box versus able to download something else?
So how reliable is the flash memory? How many writes? So will you be able? So I'm just trying to figure out. So if I'm replacing things every 3 days, how long is that?
So the current model requirement for set-top box life is 5 to 7 years. That's the expectation from the operator. Based on a usage model, if you're doing what's called a pause TV, if you average about 30 minutes a day, 8 times a day, you can actually get around about 60 minutes, 8 hours a day, pause rewind. You can actually require about 10,000 minutes. And so there's 2 options you can do from a flash memory. You can use what's called a single level cell memory, flash or NAND. That's typically a higher cost, but you can get up to 40,400 erased endurance. On a typical multi-level cell NAND, you get about 3,000. Micron actually developed a solution that we can actually meet that 10,000. So I actually worked with the operator and I worked with some of the OEM to actually define and calculate all the different scenarios. And 10,000 is really the magic number that kind of fits most models. That 8 hours a day, 5 years of life cycle. And the average is 12 megabits per second.
This is 4K content or?
4K, if you have a 4K movie, it will take, so 1 hour of 4K movie takes you about 6 to 8 gigabytes. So if you have a 16 or 32 gigabyte card, you can actually fit 2 or 3 movies. Is that sufficient? Maybe. Everyone's trying to figure out what's the right density for the different user. And that's why I was highlighting earlier is they're giving you these trickle 4K content to try to figure out what is the typical user usage model in order to determine what is the right density in order to keep the cost down and the amount of endurance requirement in the flash that still meet your expectations. That answer your question?
Big flash will have a really different time versus HD video stream.
Again, it all comes down to how much content you want to store, because the more storage you want, you just have to get higher density. Because it will come down to is how often you write to it based on the number of endurance.
The cost per bit of flash. Flash SSDs have great value. If you're looking for IOPS.
Absolutely.
Still about 5 to 10 times more expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, so if 500 gigabyte hard drive and you can fit, let's say, 100 movies, if what would give you half the density and you can store half the amount of movies, is that still good enough as a consumer? As long as I meet that 5 years and it meets your expectation that you're going to only store things that you want to watch within that 3 to 5 days, then over-designing or over-provisioning doesn't give you value. Unless you as a unique user, you want everything all the time. So you really need a super-sized hard drive and that's the right solution for you. And they're going to have both options. It's just you as a user how much you want to pay. I would have to go have a more confidential conversation with you on the memory if we want to have that conversation. Obviously, I'm in a public forum. I cannot disclose some of the content I have. From a hardware perspective, a set-top box really has no flexibility. You're connecting that box to that network. It's a one-to-one tier. An OTT box is basically an IP. You can connect to any internet services and get the content as long as it's being for that subscription. So really, in order to address this flexibility issue, is the pay TV service provider now offering subscription content over mobile device over apps that they can download off different platforms. So, how much do you want? So I'm really running out of time, so let me kind of quickly jump into some of the key points here. The key message is we're really converging the gateway. They try to do different things. They have a gateway router inside your home. They try to do a gateway modem combo. They try to do an IO hub. At the end of the day, it's going to get down to an IoT modem gateway. That's going to be one box you get out. The other side, you have your cable, satellite, telco. They try to do an IP modem. They try to do an IP gateway. At the end of the day, it comes down to an IP set-top box, a small box size of a key box. These are going to be the two main boxes you're going to have in your house. Obviously, you're going to have these OTT because you may want to have additional flexibility depending on your particular requirements. So really, at the end of the day is today, if you can have a set-top box in every room. You just need you need a modem, router, gateway, IoT hub. Tomorrow you just need an IP set-top box and a gateway. You're done. Obviously, you can have your accessories because some individual may want games that they want to have. From a memory perspective, the reason why they want to go smaller is because you have your Wi-Fi processor, you have your Ethernet receiver. All that requires some kind of NOR flash to use for this source code. You have your video decoder that has some kind of smart card, you have some kind of hard drive, you have some kind of flash and RAM. As we move forward in time, the IP set-top box, you basically get rid of the hard drive, you replace it with a card or some kind of flash memory. You may put that in an eMMC to provide you additional storage space for your application code, because apps are really code, it's not really data. You want to store that in a reliable, managed man device. In the next generation is really the Wi-Fi goes away, and then you have the 5G LTE SoC. The Wi-Fi and the transceiver is integrated into the SoC. And then you, from a memory perspective, you just have the flash memory, you have the low power DRAM, because low power DRAM is actually a 532 configuration in a single package. And so instead of having multiple 516 devices, you can just have one component. In the future, the possibility is you can have combine both of these components into one multi-chip package to further reduce the cost and form factor. So the average package box size is about 4 by 8 by 4 inch for traditional set-top box. And IP gets down to about 6 by 6. In the future, it's probably going to be a 4 by 4 by 2 inch. Depending on the model, it could get to a smaller, but really that's really the average spend versus this.
What happens to the smart card? Or why is the smart card not needed?
It's inside.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, they have to control the content. Let me kind of quickly go here. OTT, the main difference with an OTT is unlike a set-top box, it actually requires more DRAM than 516 or 532 interface. Most of the OTT set-top box actually use a application processor versus a controller. Because just like a cell phone, they should have an app processor video showing to the screen. That's all they care about. Because the content coming through is through internet. So really, that's really the main difference in OTT. The next generation, again, similar to the set-top box, is really converging to a similar type model. Faster. How's that get faster? The Wi-Fi is actually going to go to gigabit per second capability. Comcast is offering 1 gigabit per second. AT&T trying to get to 1 gigabit. Comcast right now they're doing 2 gigabit. Fiber is talking about 100 gigabit per second. So the problem is not everyone's going to get that services because it's only the cost of uploading, bringing up the road is very expensive. But for a marketing campaign, it's really good. 4K is really the name of the game for the decoder because they're going to get you excited with your content. And then the DRAM goes from 1866 megatransfer per second to 3200 megatransfer per second. When they get to the next generation, we're talking about 4266 megatransfer per second from a DRAM perspective and low power DRAM. So again, you're getting faster and faster DRAM, you're getting faster and faster processor, but the technology continues to shrink just like Moore's law in semiconductor. The cost of the component is still equal or cheaper because we would consolidate more.
What do you think of UFS?
I'm sorry?
What do you think of UFS?
UFS is actually very expensive for today. And it's also very high density. The average, the mobile guy who wants UFS is about 128 gigabytes at the lowest density. If I put a 128 gigabyte flash into a set-top box, like an IP set-top box, I might as well pay for a hard drive, a terabyte hard drive. So it's a balance between getting the latest technology, but then the cost issue. So we don't believe set-top box will use UFS purely because it's too high of a density and too high of a cost. So really, let me kind of one last slide here is really from a flash memory. The typical model is you have your SoC. The flash will actually do a store and download of the boot code into the DRAM itself, and then the NAND flash, either SLC or MLC, will then download all the various apps and programming guides into DRAM because it has much faster timing. And then you have the remainder of the DRAM for the view encoder and RAM buffer. If you want larger and larger storage for like that view buffering that we talked about in the non-DRAM architecture, you can put it into your card or the eMMC devices. So let me kind of go to last thing here. So let me kind of give you this perspective. One of the things about shrinking the box size is thermal. The process is getting faster, the DRAM is getting faster, your box is getting smaller, everything's in a plastic box. What does that equal to? Heat. And flash, if you're storing your system code, in flash and heat, basically what happens is, as you start to dissipate, you don't have enough way to determine if you have a 1 or a 0. If you use a multi-level cell, you even have a narrower window to determine a 1 or a 0. And so what does that mean? Is the flash itself is not damaged. All it is you lose the ability to know what reference you are because you lose the electrons. And so in order to refresh that, you have to erase and then put that charge back in, and that impacts your program erase cycle. And so it's a circular impact of not only you rewrite often, but if you start adding heat to the component, your reliability of the system becomes very problematic. So here's an example of a set-top box. We actually took a set-top box, 25-degree ambient on the external of the box itself. We measured the heat source. It's actually made 78 degrees Celsius. And this is at room temperature. If you take that same box and heat it to 65 degrees on the external of the box, the inside of the box, the heat source gets you about 114 Celsius. Why is that important? It's because for a set-top box, the operator has no idea where you're going to put that box. In a lot of US consumer, they put inside a very nice entertainment center, they close the cabinet and all their media boxes in there. It heats up really, really nicely. You can actually cook something inside there. The problem is, people don't recognize that this is the problem when you start using plastic. The box getting smaller, you have no ventilation, and you have no fans. And this is really the challenge that a lot of operator and OEM have to deal with. So, obviously the high performance, you gotta make sure you use really good design rule, shielding. But the problem is, if you use a lot of shielding isolates thermal. So it's a compounded problem. How do you address that? So key thing, when you get smaller, you gotta deal with thermal. Get faster, you gotta make sure you use the appropriate design rule. And it's cheaper, it's great, but you gotta make sure you use the right component. Because if you start using cheaper components that is not designed for these applications, you basically have a ticking time bomb architecture in the system. So the last slide here is, what can Micron bring to the table? We actually develop flash and DRAM in small form factor. We have the density required for that video storage. We actually have flash memory that can actually meet the temperature requirements. And we have memory that can meet that cycling endurance required for video. On the DRAM, we can actually go high enough of frequency to meet the demand of video. And also, we're working on next generation DRAM in order to meet that requirement. And lastly, we continue to reduce our technology in size and lithography in order to maintain the best cost and a balance of system architecture and best cost. So, if you have any questions, please contact the local Micron sales representative, and we'll be happy to have a confidential conversation. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize for taking too much time. All very good questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.